Welcome to Focus on the Candidates. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is John Connor, and John is running for Congress in North Carolina. So, John, is this your first time running for office, or have you ever done that before?
I thank you, Cynthia, for having me. By the way, I really appreciate the time today and the opportunity to tell people about my platform. But this is my first foray into public office, besides student government president of Culinary Institute of America back in the early 2000s, and I ran for high school president but didn't win.
Oh,
So
wow.
this is my first foray into federal office, into any public office.
Now, did you decide to run because of the student loan debt crisis?
Student loan debt crisis is why I am one of the reasons why I'm an active. I decided to run this particular time because Charlie Kirk got shot, and I was very concerned that two-party politics was leading us to civil war. And I figured that it's time for adults to be in the room to start leading the way. Third-party adults, I call it, and I happen to be one of them.
So, why do you think that um, Charlie Kirk's murder will possibly lead to a civil war? That's interesting.
I think that things have calmed down a little bit, but once it first originally happened, to see a person that I've spent thousands of hours watching his tape and seeing that he was a little inflammatory for sure. He said things that weren't perfect, but to watch him get shot in the neck in front of a live audience in Utah was just highly disturbing. And the fact, and after the fact, the response online that was vicious led me to believe that we need some peacefulness. And actually, it helped me understand that the Christian right is not very Christian all the time, and has growth. It can be more loving and more caring in their perspectives.
So, let me ask you this. If you have followed closely on YouTube, I would say, the Charlie Kirk situation, whatever happened to Mikey McCoy? I
I don't know
mean,
Mikey. Can you tell me about Mikey McCoy? I'm not familiar with
he
him.
was his right-hand man, and when Charlie Kirk was shot, he just walked away from the stage and nobody's ever heard from him again.
Oh my God. Yeah, see, I'm not, I was concerned, but I haven't followed every single detail because there's so much, I think, misinformation in the process too that I
Mhm.
had to tune out. But it's a very interesting perspective. I'm not aware of.
Okay. So are you having a good time running for Congress?
Yeah, yeah, I just secured enough money to get on the ballot, $1,740 from a PAC that's unnamed at the moment. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to at least change and shift the conversation. Definitely in favor of the student loan bankruptcy, and definitely in favor of the brand of activism I come from is Occupy Wall Street, and so I'm here to occupy Congress.
Wow. So were you heavily involved in Occupy Wall Street?
Yes, I was a very corporate guy with a very different trajectory prior to Occupy Wall Street. After Occupy Wall Street, I had taken a very extreme stance. I purposely defaulted on my student loans,
You
and
purposely did that?
I'm now in forbearance. But at the time, I did purposely, and I could supply the blog. It's a little childish, give me the benefit of the doubt. It was 13 years ago. I've grown since then. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, I purposely defaulted because as a financial analyst, I was trained at City University of New York, Baruch College. I saw
Mhm.
the trajectory of student loan defaults, and they looked to be in the hockey stick curve, is what we call it, blowing up. And right now, I think when I purposely defaulted, there was 800 billion in student loan debt outstanding. There's now 1.8 trillion with a T. So
Hmm.
it's astronomically out of control. Every single administration has kicked the can down the road, and we need adults in the room to address the problem.
During the since I met Alan Collins, every time there's a election cycle for president, I always listen to if the student loan debt crisis is going to be addressed. Well, it was addressed a little bit in 2024, but in previous presidential races, it was barely addressed. And, at that point, there was 1.5 trillion.
Yep.
Could you overlook 1.5 trillion? And how could you overlook over 40 million people who have student loans? That's enough to swing an election. But, the politicians were silent on it. What do you think that was?
Well, firstly, I just want to give for I'm a libertarian, so I'm a third party adult, as mentioned, and I'm actually running on I think Joe Biden 2020 platform item, which is to reinstate bankruptcy for student loans. What ended up happening was Joe Biden at that time was not using TikTok and Instagram Reels the way that kids are using it today. I think that there's an enormous base, as you mentioned, 40 million people nationally that are have student loans outstanding. Not every one of those people want to go bankrupt, but we all want the opportunity to go bankrupt, just like if we got in over our head for any type of debt. So I'm going to use TikTok and Instagram Reels and social media and Facebook here where we met in a way that Joe Biden's campaign did not use. So I want to give respect to Joe, though I haven't been as super respectful to him in the past. I want to change my ways and be respectful to all candidates of all parties. But student loan bankruptcy is essential for integrity in capital markets. If we have an asset class that we can't bankrupt ourselves out of, which since 1984, we haven't been able to bankrupt ourselves out of federal student loans, federally backed student loans. And then since 2005, we haven't been able to bankrupt ourselves with publicly backed student loans. What happens is it increases the price of the underlying asset, the American higher education. There is no asset class on planet Earth that has grown 8% compounded year over year since 1984 because we could, besides American higher education, because we can't bankrupt ourselves out of our debt. They'll take our Medicare payments, they'll take our Social Security, they'll take our tax returns, they'll garnish our wages, it's an astronomical problem the Department of Education is profiting from that needs to be addressed because the American people are not profiting.
Do you think this is all by design?
I think it was so I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I've lived in conspiracy camp in the past, and I might lean in that direction sometimes. I do understand the argument that when the lobby came to Congress and said we can't repossess American student loan borrowers' brains, so instead we have to be able to collect at all costs. I can't imagine they would have understood the social ramifications of that problem, at that time, and we're sitting in the back room like evil, with evil laughter. I have to think that the side effect was they made a logical argument at the time that now has astronomically terrible social consequences, and we as adults now have to address it.
So, in the past, like I said, it wasn't brought up that much. And, back in the day, Biden was one of the architects to put this whole thing, you know,
He was not the architect of the 1984 bill. He was the architect of the 2005 bill. So yes, he was responsible, and he tried to change the course of his past legacy with that legislation. The problem was Congress was co-opted. Two party people still all answer to the banks. We need the people to start taking office. People like me, I'm a regular guy with a lot of debt and a small business tax firm, solo tax firm called Less Tax Enterprises. I'm just a regular guy who's running for Congress because I don't think there's any adults in the room. And I think that if many of us do this, we can change the course of history and we can grab the reins from the corrupted officials who all answer to the banks. Joe Biden and all of them did.
so, it's difficult. It's difficult for the average citizen to say, I'm going to jump in there and I want to change this system like you're doing. What advice do you have for these people?
Well, firstly, I just want to finish up the student loan conversation. Where I think bankruptcy is better than forgiveness, Joe Biden moved from bankruptcy to forgiveness later on. and that forgiveness is a lot of pushback from the working class. I don't think Americans should have their student loans forgiven. If you do go bankrupt, it's 7 years of bad credit. It's a real consequence for one's actions, and not everybody will do it. So I just wanted to note that. And then secondly, to answer your question, how do regular people do it? I'm going to do this. I'm going to raise hopefully around 10%, 10% of what my opponents raise. So my opponents
Yeah.
are going to raise about 1.5 million. My target is hopefully if I'm blessed, I'm going to raise 10% of what they raise. And I'm going to go around my entire district, 17 counties, and I'm going to take a social media, take my phone and a tripod and a little lapel microphone, two of them, and I'm going to talk to constituents and ask them what they want. And I'm going to reflect it back to them, actually, like Mamdani did. He asked people of all political parties what they wanted, and he gave it to them, and he won.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, have you spoken to any other congressional candidates who wants to make student loan a major part of their platform?
Great question. No, the only congressional candidate I've spoken to is one of my potential opponents. I'm a libertarian, so I don't have to primary in my district.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who understand, in March of 2026, the Republicans and Democrats have to fight it out in a primary to see who faces me in the big show.
Right.
And elections in November. And Jamie Yeager is the congressional candidate, the Democratic Party in this district, who's favored to win. He did not mention anything about student loans in his ticket. I hope to at least push the two candidates, one of the two candidates of the Republican or Democrat, probably the Democrat because of historical ties to the working class, um, to start thinking about student loans as a major issue. But I don't know anybody running right now. I'm not aware of anybody running right now that's making student loan bankruptcy the core tenet of their platform besides me.
So, do you think that ultimately the student loan crisis will collapse this economy?
Well, that's a great question. So as a financial analyst, I'm most concerned about the debt the interest on our debt. So for those of you who don't know, Donald Trump just proposed tariffs, and he's saying that there's so much money coming in, he can give us back checks.
Right.
10 years of tariff revenue won't cover 100 days of interest. 100 days of interest, our debt goes up $1 trillion with a T. So the student loan debt bubble is combined with the interest debt bubble. That's more money than we spend more money on interest than we do on our military. And we spend the most on our military of anyone anywhere in the world. So our entire budget is a Ponzi scheme that's about to collapse.
Okay, you said a Ponzi scheme that's about to collapse.
Yes.
What do you envision if it does?
Well, I mean, I encourage all Americans to get one of these and ensure that they're protected. And I encourage us to protect our communities, grow our own food, maybe get some gold and silver, and consider a complete drastic transformation of our society unlike anything we've ever seen before in history, worse than the Great Depression.
Okay, what do you envision in the transformation?
I envision a 40 to 80% correction in the stock market and all assets in America, and a hyperinflation scenario within the next 5 years, and a time where we need to reassess what is value in our society.
Okay, so you just exposed a gun on this video.
Yes, I did.
There is a lot of hate and division in this country. What you're espousing doesn't help, does it?
I appreciate that perspective, and I understand you're from New York. The Second Amendment in the United States is not about hate. The Second Amendment in the United States is about community protection. And if society does come into a chaotic time, I trust myself and my neighbors to protect myself and my neighbors from harm more than I do a collapsing federal government or a federal government that's overreaching with the immigration and customs enforcement actions right now. So, in my opinion, I trust my neighbors and myself more than I trust my federal officials.
Wow. Wow.
So I don't espouse hate. I don't espouse libertarians live by the non-aggression principle. So we don't aggress. We're not out to attack. We're not out to shoot anybody, but we are out to protect. We are out to stand firm and say no when it's time to say no. And sometimes you have to say no with a little bit of bang in your pocket than not.
Okay, so you're running third party. What's your opinion of the two major parties?
I think the two major parties are corrupted, childish, and are incapable of governing our country. And they've shown that to us with most recently with this government shutdown. And both are tyrannical. Blue Party during COVID was tyranny like nothing I've ever seen. And the Red Party right now with their immigration and customs enforcement team out there destroying constitutional rights of Americans and people in this country are stepping in the toes of tyranny and need to be stopped.
Okay, so I'm sure you've looked at my channel. Um, have you listened to the other candidates who have I've interviewed?
I briefly listened a couple weeks ago. Could you refresh my memory?
In general.
In general, I saw that you had a lot of people from the two-party system. I didn't see any independents in your channel.
Right, right. Um, so do you think that 2026 and 28 we'll see more third party candidates running for office?
We are going to see more candidates of both parties and a third party rejecting corporate PAC money and AIPAC money, most notably because those institutions have corrupted our government and there's a strong popular pushback against those institutions.
Okay, so if there's a district in which one of the candidates gets tons of money for APAC from APAC and the other candidate gets just small donations. The candidate from that get the small donations, do you think they have a chance to overcome the APAC money?
Actually, that's an example of what's happening in North Carolina, District 11 in Western North Carolina, where I'm currently running. Chuck Edwards is known as, I call him Chuck the AIPAC Edwards. He's a Trump MAGA Republican, and he's swimming in AIPAC money. He's the incumbent, and he ran on $1.4 million last time. He'll probably running on $1.6 to $2 million this time. I don't know about the Democratic candidate, Jamie Yeager. He hasn't answered my question as far as whether he'll take AIPAC money or not, but he's an established Democrat of 3 generations, and so it leads me to believe he might. I personally will not be taking any AIPAC money, and I think that that's a huge advantage with a small little blue town called Asheville, North Carolina, where I'm currently living, and a red district that's very upset with America First rhetoric combined with Israel First action. They're very upset with that dichotomy, that misleading actions of their candidates. And so I'm Mountain People First is where I stand on the John Connors for NC-11. And Mountain People First is immovable. It's the Cherokee tribe down the street. It's the Asheville leftist. It's the MAGA Republican. Mountain People First.
So you're raising money from small donations, right?
Yes.
Okay. So have you been approached by anybody who offered you um a substantial amount, a substantial pack? Have you been offered any money from them?
Not yet, but I do believe that that might happen if I gain the traction I believe is possible out here.
Okay, so if that's the case, would you Say yes or no.
I would say no, especially from APAC. From
Okay.
APAC, I'm a hell no. From another pack, I potentially would, and I would write to my constituents in a blog why I took their money if I chose to take some corporate money. I'm not going to say no to any corporate money because I want to stay competitive, but I am a hell no to APAC.
Okay. Do you think a majority of people understand what AIPAC is?
No, and that is part of the education that's required. A lot of people here in my district understand it because we're guns and gold mountaineer people, but not everybody understands it, and it does require an educational conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Most notably, that APAC does not have to register for FARA, basically the Foreign Lobby Act, and because they say that they're an American Israeli um, security political action committee, and so they've gotten around those rules, and they're brilliant and very well funded. And I don't mind taking out my slingshot and being David and taking down that Goliath.
Wow. So how how has the corporate media been treating you?
I believe that because the government was shut down, that there was no way when I did my press release a few weeks ago for organizations to double check that I had done my FEC paperwork. I believe everything's gone through now, so there's been a complete silence on the corporate media side for my campaign. But I give them the benefit of the doubt because the federal government was not up and functioning, allowing them to cross-reference my paperwork.
So you're doing a majority of your campaign on social media, right?
Social media is exclusively where I'm at, and my website is Connors for Congress. I'm John Connors, Connors, connorsforcongress.com. And you can find all my social media right at the very top of that page. And
And I'm sorry, John. Is your word spreading through social media?
yeah, I mean, well, Alan Collins, our dear friend, our shared buddy from Student Loan Justice, he was the first person to donate to the campaign. And and the student loan video I made, I think has about 7 to 10,000 views on between TikTok and Instagram. So
Uh-huh.
this loan issue is the biggest hot button issue that led to the most views so far. I'm not getting millions of views yet, but I believe it's only a matter of time until I get the word out, till we cut this podcast up into little bits and we get the word out and spread it virally. And I think we can be extremely successful now using social media.
Now, do you think of politics as theater?
I believe politics can be like theater, and when it's in its most degenerative form, it's like theater. The politics I'm bringing forth is regenerative politics. I'm not here to disparage anybody. Jamie Yeager is a great regenerative farmer. I did call Chuck the APAC Edwards because that's where he gets his funding, and I'm disappointed with his current leadership in our district. But I'm not here to attack or cut down or theatrically destroy another candidate. I'm here to push the conversation to regenerative politics.
Okay, so if politics is theater, do you consider the corporate media fiction?
Corporate media is absolutely fiction, specifically because nobody's watching it anymore. The numbers on corporate media versus podcasts are like David versus Goliath in reverse. Podcasts get huge reach, huge expansion for a very short amount of money. This is just us two hanging out, and we get to cut this up into multiple pieces,
Mhm.
use it, spread it, and nobody the numbers on corporate media are going like this. And so I
Okay.
think this is the 2024 election was the year of the podcast got the president elected. I believe in 2026 and 2028, it's the years that the podcast gets more and more people in Congress, more and more people elected, and the corporate media becomes obsolete.
But the people in the corporate media, they're getting huge amount of salaries. Their compensation is like millions of dollars a year, and you and I, maybe we could get a couple of pennies here and there. And I don't see, I don't.
I hear I hear you on the dollars, but $1 million doesn't buy a campaign. What buys a campaign is reach to the voters. And the people, the more people you touch, move, and inspire with a message and there are more people to be touched, moved, and inspired in the podcast sphere than in the corporate and media sphere.
Okay, good. So, if your fairy godmother came down, handed you her magic wand, and said, "Here, take this, make one wish to make this world better," what would that wish be?
That wish would be to overturn Citizens United and remove corporate money from elections in the United States of America.
So give us your um how people can reach you again.
Connors for Congress, CONNORS for Congress.com, support at connorsforcongress.com, and then all my social medias are there. TikTok is Regen Men, Regenerative Men is what I go with. I host people in the wilderness for events for men's social development, and part of what came out of my men's groups was this campaign. I'm here to stand up for a better world, for a better United States of America, for fairer markets, and for podcasts for the people like this, Cynthia. And thank you very much for having me.
And thank you, John. I'm sure we will be talking again. So you've been listening to John Connors, who's running for Congress on the Libertarian Party line
Yep.
in the state of North
North.
Carolina. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Focus on the Candidates. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. John, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you, Cynthia. I really appreciate this